that, just get in touch with us or send us an email. So I do have to mention the passing of Randall Gabriele. Randy was a good friend to many of us here. He was our president for about 2 decades. And even after that, he served as an advisor to us. I could go on for a long time talking about what Randy meant to me personally and to the Historical Society, but we're going to reserve that for a future time for an official tribute pending direction from his family. But for right now, I would like to have a moment of silence for Randy. All right, thank you, everybody. And you do see that the library was nice enough to set up a little display of just some of Randy's books. He has many, many books, as I'm sure you all know. This is just a sampling of them. So you can come up, take a look at them, and they are circulating. If you'd like to take one out, you have a library card. You're free to take one. Thank you to everybody who supports us, all of our sponsors, the Middletown Township Public Library, all of our members, and everybody who volunteers for us. Thank you. If you'd like to connect with us, again, best place is our website, middletownnjhistory.org, where you can follow us on social media or send us an email. So on to tonight's speaker. I got to get my notes. So our speaker tonight is Michael Gabriele. He has written 5 books that I just learned about. He is a lifelong resident of New Jersey. He's a 1975 graduate of Montclair State University, and he's worked as a journalist and freelance writer for more than 40 years. So I think this is going to be an interesting topic tonight. So we're going to bring on Michael Gabriele.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the Historical Society for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the nice turnout here. Are most of you people with the Historical Society or from around town or? Oh, well, okay. Well, good to get to know you and good to get to know the Historical Society. My name is Michael Gabriele. I am an author with the History Press. I have written 5 books for the History Press, all about New Jersey history. That's all I write about. I'm a Jersey guy. And my latest book is The Colonial Taverns of New Jersey. Very sorry to hear about the passing of your historian here. Didn't know the man, but sounds like a very nice chap. I've read about him online. I read about him when he passed away. So, boy, he'll be missed, I suppose. But you'll have a nice program for him. So that'll be good. One thing I should say before we start, as we're getting ready to celebrate Rev 250, keep in mind, as we're doing all these celebrations, New Jersey is the crossroads of the revolution, right? Right? Huh? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lots of important stuff was happening. You've been watching the Ken Burns documentary, but New Jersey was the place where all the major battles were fought: Battle of Monmouth, Battle of Springfield, Trenton, Princeton, where all the encampments were. George Washington spent most of his time in New Jersey. I think we should make him an honorary Jersey guy. I think he deserves it. New Jersey has always been the corridor state. You got to go through New Jersey to get to wherever you want to go. So New York, Philadelphia in the 1700s. That was a arduous walk or wagon ride along the so-called colonial highways, which were mud and bricks, mud and rocks. So taverns were actually a necessity back in those days. And the people in government realized that, because you had to have a place to stop, take a break, get something to eat, get something to drink, take care of the horses. In fact, I've learned that most colonial villages during this period, all through the 1700s, they basically mandated that each town had to have a tavern, because they knew people were going to be passing through. They knew that they were going to be stopping in and wanting help. It also was good for the local business. So, the local community. So in that respect, taverns were a hospitality business when you come right down to it. And good. I got the idea for doing this book from another book I had done. New Jersey, I mean, we've got a long history that goes back to the 1600s. New Jersey history is so interwoven. I published a book about New Jersey folk revival music. I say that the folk revival started here in New Jersey. Nobody agrees with me, but that's okay. I've got my reasons. But when I was doing that book, I wanted to go back to the very early days of folk music. And folk music is that tradition of songs that are handed down generation to generation. And so in the early 1700s or the late 1600s, when everybody was at their local tavern in the village, that was the social meeting place, somebody would get up and sing a folk song from Ireland or Scotland or Wales, and everybody would join in. That's the folk tradition. Everybody participates, everybody joins in. And something about that just struck me. I said, that's kind of nice. You know, if people go to their local taverns during the colonial period, it's a social gathering place. So I kept a few notes. I said, I'm going to come back to this one of these days. Well, I did, not really even knowing where it might lead. Maybe nowhere. Maybe I thought maybe a magazine article. My approach for most of my books, I have to say, very naive. I approach it with a blank slate. No agenda, no animosity, no axes to grind. I'm just interested in the history. I'm interested in stories. I'm trying to develop a narrative. So I started looking into it. Okay, the taverns were a hospitality business, right? People passing through. Okay, and sometimes people stayed in New Jersey because New Jersey is a nice place. People like to live here. That's why we're so crowded. Say what you want about New Jersey, but lots of people live here. Okay, so the hospitality business. Taverns were the places where people would meet to discuss business and to socialize and meet the stage wagons coming through and to vote and to sign up for militias. And very important, if you wanted to be social back in the colonial period, you had to learn how to dance the proper way. All the line dances, these very flirtatious line dances that they had, the hornpipe and the cotillion. If you wanted to meet a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that's how you did it. You went to a tavern and you danced. So, okay, that's kind of interesting. Militias, yeah, they went to the militias, signed up at the local taverns. George Washington very often would commandeer taverns to be his temporary headquarters, as did the British during the Revolutionary War. All right, this is getting interesting. And then I came upon it. Then I knew I had something. I found a lot of local history and websites and books that said taverns were the seed beds of the revolution. This is where the patriots would go to meet and talk about current events, about politics, about political philosophy, about what was going on with the British in the 1700s. This is where they went. And if you were careful, I mean, by the 1770s, England knew something was going on. There was a little tension in the air. So the British soldiers were all around. But if you were careful, a tavern was a public venue. And you could pretty much talk to whomever you wanted to talk to and talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. Now, if you were a group of patriots and you wanted to meet in some cabin way out in the woods and the British caught you, oh, well, this is conspiracy. We got you. It's sedition. But if you did it at the tavern, no problem. More or less, no problem. And also, before the war really got started, patriots and loyalists would have their favorite taverns. They would intermingle and they would talk. The loyalists said, well, we agree that all these intolerable acts that the king is putting on us and these taxes, we want to, let's negotiate. We can, no. The patriots said, no, revolution. So now I also learned from a historian on the West Coast, just happened to stumble, you never know what you're going to find online. I found online a West Coast legal newsletter from a group, must have been like a trade group for lawyers. And there was a story in there, and this man said that so-called tavern talk back in the 1770s. That formed the basis of the Assembly Clause in the Constitution. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, I found this guy online, and he was very nice. He chatted with me. I said, "Really? This?" He said, "Oh yeah, this is my thesis." Tavern talk that led to the Assembly Clause in the Constitution. I said, "Pretty cool. All right." So all these things started adding up. I called my publisher. I said, "I think I got a book here." They said, "Okay, great, go ahead." So they're very nice to me, my publisher. So that's a little bit of a backdrop about the book and about taverns. Taverns were for the travelers who would come through. They were for the local people in the villages, and the tavern keeper, man or woman, a lot of women tavern keepers back in those days, man or woman, basically was one of the more respected people in the community, because they had to have a tavern business. You had to go before the town council, and you had to present, people had to stand up and represent you and say, yes, this person is honorable and honest, and the tavern will be a great benefit to our community. And you had to follow rules and regulations. So to have a tavern, you had to know your stuff. So now the tavern keeper knew almost everybody in the village, and also knew when somebody was passing through. So if somebody was coming along on the stagecoach, they got out and they went to the tavern, and he went up to the bar. He wanted a drink. "Oh, hello, sir. And what's your name?" "Oh, my name is Philip Smith." "Oh, really? Hello, Mr. Smith. How are you? You're not from around here." "No, I'm from Massachusetts." "Oh, really? And where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going down to Philadelphia. I'm going to visit my family." "Oh, that's nice. And tell me what's going on up in Massachusetts." "Well, did you hear about what the British soldiers are doing up there to us? It's terrible." "Oh, really? Tell me a little more." So the tavern keeper was like an internet portal. He kept all this information and he disseminated it to people in the village. And of course, the stories always got more colossal and more colorful. But and I learned that oral history, stories that traveled some distance, were fairly reliable and traveled quickly. So that's no exaggeration. People who had stories to tell about what was going on outside of the village, that's how people found out. The stage wagons often brought with them colonial newspapers. Most of them were loyalist papers, but there were some patriot papers. And so the tavern was a place, again, where people wanted to get their news. Well, not everybody in those days could read and write, but for those people who could, they'd take the newspaper, they'd stand up and they'd read the newspaper out loud and give people the information. So taverns served this great necessity for people in life. And they were, like I said, social in places like that. And they were important. And so the more I got into it, I would read here and there where the tavern was an important part of the community. I didn't find anybody that really did a deep dive. And my approach is always grassroots up. I wasn't really that interested. I mean, we've got a lot of great books about New Jersey during the Revolutionary War and the colonial period. The generals, the big conflicts, yes, true. But I didn't find much about grassroots. So to me, the tavern, writing about taverns, that was my window into the past. What were people doing? What did they eat? How did they worship? How do they conduct business? Little things like that. I mean, this stuff fascinates me. But it tells the story about New Jersey and our roots. We've inherited the legacy of all these people. Yes.
I'm curious about the genesis of the tavern in New Jersey. Is it a Dutch legacy or is it English legacy? Because the Dutch were the first settlers.
Yeah.
We know that tavern culture was very prominent in the Netherlands.
Yes, and that's right. That's right. I have a Dutch painting that I'm going to show you. Yes, both British and Dutch. And in Europe, the pubs, or they called them, or the ordinaries, or the taverns, this was the place where the intelligentsia would meet at these places and talk about things like politics and philosophy. So it's an offshoot of that, yes. So that was the tradition that they came from. So yes, the tavern served a very important function in the community. And what some other things I can tell you, just generally speaking. The first tavern in New Jersey, well, the earliest one I could find was 1668. a man by the name of Henry Lyon, a Scotsman. He had come to the New World. I guess he was a man of some means. He landed in Connecticut, and then he heard about all this interesting stuff that was going on in this place called Newark, New Jersey. He took his family to Newark, and he was right away accepted among the village elders. They could see he was a very smart man. He knew how to handle money. He was a property owner. And we have transcripts from Newark back in those days, 1668. And the proclamation was, as soon as possible, Mr. Henry Lyon is to establish a tavern here in Newark. And it was probably on Broad Street. It was probably a log structure. That's the earliest one I could find. I'd say that was probably our first tavern. First person to brew beer in New Jersey, a Dutchman, Aert van Putten was his name. And in the late 1600s, he bought a piece of property in Hoboken, right on the river, and he had a house, and he had a farm, and he had an orchard, and he had a brewery. And he was our first brewer, at least the first one I could find. I always try to triangulate my sources. I try not to go by just one source. I try to see if I can fit it together. And sure enough, a lot of people, especially with him, they said, yeah, he was the guy, and they had the date and everything. So that's pretty good. What was the favorite beverages of the day? Rum. That was the most popular drink. It was also a big part of the colonial economic system. London, the West Indies, where the sugar plantations were, Perth Amboy. They make the sugar, they make the molasses, bring it up to Perth Amboy. So rum was a big part of our economic system. Number two, hard cider. And the best apples came from the orchards in Newark. And as I understand it, apples that were grown for cider would be basically, you couldn't eat them. They were too bitter, but they made great cider. And you would make the cider, you would also jack the cider. You'd keep compressing it, and that would make apple brandy. So that was number two, and then beer. And then as more Europeans came to New Jersey, the Swedes, they started introducing hard liquors because that's what they liked. And they were always flavored with some sort of an herb. So those were the favorite drinks back in those days. That's what people like to drink and like to do. So maybe we should go right to the am I going the right way here? Is it this? Okay. So wait, go back. Oh, wait a minute. No. Oh, I see. Okay, wait. Okay, so that's me. That's a book. Got plenty of copies of the book if you want them. All right. So, do we have any reenactors here today? Any members of the DAR? I tip my hat to you people because reenactors, these historical societies, Sons of the American Revolution, the DAR, these people, they're keeping history alive. I'm a big believer in living history. History is not something that's sitting on a dusty old shelf in some book. History is living, right? As I said, we've inherited we've inherited all the legacy from people back in the 16 and 1700s. Business, farming, the legal system, the governmental system, the roads, right? The trails that George Washington would retreat on. I mean, if he went from Trenton to Princeton up to Morristown. That's Route 202. So that's part of who we are. So Battle of Monmouth. I mean, come on, Monmouth is like, forget about it. It's like nobody's business. We have so much history down here. It's incredible. Revolutionary War history. So you're very lucky to be living in this area. Monmouth's got a lot of great stuff. So this was the Battle of Monmouth. I got invited there a couple of years ago. I took pictures. I write about it in the book. And hundreds of reenactors. These are the British reenactors, and these are some of the Patriot reenactors. Now, people are involved in this. Yeah, they enjoy it. It's fun. They like to get dressed up they have to have everything has to be the right kind of uniform, the right kind of buttons, the right kind of belt buckle, the right kind of musket. But again, they take this stuff very seriously. They're keeping the history alive. And when I was at the Battle of Monmouth, amazing. There's that ridge where you overlook the field where, and this was a major military operation. The Hessians were there, the British were there, the Colonial Army was, and they're conducting, they would advance and retreat, and the cannons were shooting, and all along that ridge, lots of people watching this, and families, and this is the real deal. This isn't YouTube. This is not Netflix. This was real history. This is the Battle of Monmouth was a real battle that was fought right here in New Jersey, and one of the big turning points of the war. So, there it is. That was the field. And the Daughters of the American Revolution made my job very easy. They have historic markers and historic plaques all around New Jersey. And this is down there at the Battle of Monmouth, and great for remembrance. Yes, it was a turning point in the War for Revolution. New Jersey is the crossroads of the revolution. I'll say it again. So. Now, I always try to localize my talks. I found this online. I don't know much about this place. Was this a wealthy landowner that lived there? Does anybody know? I just read a little bit online. I mean, I got to do some research, but I Googled Revolutionary War sites or colonial sites, Monmouth County. I mean, the list went on and on. So I just picked a few. This, not my picture, full disclosure. I got this from online. Now this place, I wanted to go to this place today, weather not permitting, but I'll get there. I'll get there. This is the Seabrook Wilson House. And there was a guy who, the first inhabitant, and the house is built on an earlier it was an earlier house, Mr. Whitlock. And he maybe was one of the first people that lived in this area. So I came to the library early, I got some information. I'm always doing research. I'm always interested. I'm always looking for a story. See? My books are not textbooks. My books aren't something you'd read maybe you would in a class in college or high school. I'm interested in stories. I'm interested in developing a narrative. It's all human interest stories. That's what I'm interested in. Okay, the Village Tavern. We have a gentleman here. Great place. I always wait. I love doing my road trips, and so I try to string them together. I say, "Oh, it's a nice day today. I think I'm gonna go down to Englishtown and take a picture of this place." And I did. There are those who say this was George Washington's headquarters or one of his headquarters during the Battle of Monmouth. For some people who did a historical study, say, well, maybe the oral history seems to suggest it, but we can't find any documentation. You were telling me you've got an opinion on this.
Well, I guess you could call it an opinion. Historians have looked when we got money from the state to restore the building.
Mm-hmm.
They did have to have historians look through the original documentation. They found nothing. Some of our own members who have done over many years have searched through articles, local newspapers, and everything.
Yeah.
They found nothing. Well, I should say they found nothing. What they eventually found is much later on. The first time was in 1929 in a magazine that no longer exists, Saturday Evening Post. And that time period was the 150th anniversary of the Revolution. And the owner of the tavern, her husband was the mayor of the town.
Okay.
That was Applegate.
Okay. Was Applegate's Tavern back in those days?
Applegate?
Was it Applegate's Tavern in those days?
No. It was Fleming. They kept it the Fleming.
Okay.
And Hazel Fleming, she basically called it the Village Inn. So
Okay.
by 1932, we know it's called Village Inn.
Right.
There are references to Village Inn much earlier, but it's not this building because we know there were other taverns nearby, but we don't know where.
Well, you know what? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's still, the building itself is a great example of Dutch architecture. So it's worthwhile just pointing it out. And you go there, do you have meetings there now? Or?
Oh, yeah, that's,
Okay.
it's changed a little, on the right-hand side, first floor. There used to be two separate dining rooms, it's now one large room.
All right.
Because the society wanted a meeting room.
Okay.
Originally, and we pointed out, we have brought things that was originally, as a matter of fact, there are two fireplaces downstairs.
Right.
Because there were two dining rooms.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Monmouth County. The Allen House. Right in the four quarters of Shrewsbury, very historic place. Every corner, there's a historic cemetery. There's the Quaker Meeting House there. There's a church. And then there's the Allen House, infamous for the Allen House Massacre. There were some Revolutionary Wars, Continental Army soldiers were spending the night there. The British found out about it. They went there, they beat them up, they killed some of them, they took them prisoners. So unfortunately, it's got an infamous story to it, but a very historic place. And you know, it's not a tavern anymore. Now, there must be some historical society that runs it or maintains it. We're lucky. We've got a number of tavern structures in New Jersey. I like tangible history. I like to be able to walk into a place and say, oh, this is where Lafayette was. This is where Alexander Hamilton was. Oh, yeah, I get it. Oh, nice. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay. The oldest distillery in the United States, right here in New Jersey, in Scoobyville, right? I called them. The woman, she's the 9th generation laird who's running the place. Very nice. Can I come visit? No. They can't show me any of the secrets, but boy. And there it is. Jersey Lightning. I don't do hard liquor. I don't know what stuff tastes like. I mean, I could probably sip it and go, oh my God, it'll send me for a loop. But they started recording their business records, I think in like 1720 or something. Mr. Laird founded it even before that. So
1698 is their current location.
Yeah.
They were in another part of New Jersey. I can't remember for a number of years before that.
Well, I like them. I like them right there. That's good enough for me. Okay. Talk about important taverns. There are a few taverns that still operate as places where you can eat and drink. Not many, but this is the tavern in Haddonfield on New Jersey's west coast along the Delaware River. Very historic place. Haddonfield, Bordentown, Burlington. This is like the colonial corridor of New Jersey. People who live in these towns are very proud of their history, and they very, very proud and sincere to maintain all this history that they got there, the structures. Today it's known as the Indian King Tavern. But back in the day, it was the house of Hugh McElhaney or something like that. Well, we had the Continental Congress, but we also had the General Assembly. They were interconnected. And the General Assembly was 40 or so businessmen from all different backgrounds, lawyers, farmers, merchants, doctors, and they were helping to keep things going in terms of the revolution. And they would pass ordinances and they would visit local communities. Well, 1777, they were on the move because if the British caught them, they'd be in big trouble. So they met in Trenton, they met in Princeton, they met in New Brunswick, and then they decided to come and meet in Haddonfield. And the people, they're docents. It's New Jersey owns this property now, and they're very nice docents there. They'll give you a tour, call them up. They can family visit. Haddonfield is a beautiful little community, and they shared with me documents that have either been transcribed or the original manuscripts that they kept back in those days of all the laws and ordinances that they passed. So in September of 1777, the General Assembly passed an ordinance, and it said something to the effect of, from this point going forward, anytime an official document is generated in New Jersey, a deed, a financial transaction, a tax document, New Jersey is to be known as a state, not a colony. It's a pretty interesting choice of words. State, not a colony. So on the second floor of this tavern is where New Jersey became New Jersey, a state. That's where it happened. Now, somebody was mentioning the Dutch influence. This is, I think I found this online. I think it was actually in the public domain. And when I find an illustration, I grab those right away. This was a painting by a Dutch painter, 1668. And it's got the Dutch look to it, but it would probably be very similar to the tavern you'd find in New Jersey. When I do my books, I'm responsible not only for, I sign a contract, I got a deadline, I got a word count, so I got to do 50,000 words. I also have to do 100 images for the book. The book is illustrated. So yeah, I'm a pretty good photographer. I go around the state and I take as many pictures as I can. I meet local historians. But my challenge was, all right, how do I always want the reader to understand what it is I'm trying to say. How do I illustrate what went on inside of a tavern? Obviously, no photographs, but we had genre painters back in those days, skilled artists who kind of like our photographers back in the early days of the 20th century. They weren't interested in painting portraits of rich people or royalty. They weren't interested in doing grand landscapes. They were interested in painting real everyday life. Nothing was every day back in those days. So here we have a painting. As I mentioned, dancing is very important. You can see this guy's got a girlfriend already. See, it works. He's got his moccasins in the front there. He's got his socks. He's got a hole in his socks because he must be doing a lot of dancing. And everybody's having a good time. The little girl with the dolly in the left corner. The fiddle, that was the instrument. That was the music. No guitars, not yet. The design for the guitar had not been finalized yet. The fiddle was the main instrument. Now, in the middle of the painting, can you see there? You see there's like a tree next to that cabinet? I downloaded this picture. I never even noticed that. In one of these talks I gave once, they said, "Why do they have a tree in a tavern?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Well, look, you see it?" I looked at it. Oh, yeah. Why is there a tree in a tavern? I don't know. Must be good luck or something. So, tree in a tavern.
Trees in a tavern were for looking forward to spring.
There's the answer.
The tree in the tavern, and evergreen in particular, if you go back to the Christmas look and look at the Christmas history, it doesn't lose its leaves and it stays till spring.
All right.
So a lot of taverns do that, and that's why Christmas tree is the Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
It was brought in. It didn't go bad. It smelled good for a lot of reasons. It covered a lot of other things.
All right. Okay.
For a lot of reasons.
Thank you. You've educated me. I thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No charge. Okay.
Unless you've got Clarence Applejack for the bottles.
I don't. An occasional beer once in a while. I can't drink anymore. A glass of wine, beer once in a while. Now, yes, there are a lot of taverns in New Jersey. I couldn't write about all of them. Like when I did my diner books, can't write about all the diners, but I try to get a sense of the spirit, the mythology, the history behind the stuff. Now, we've lost taverns for sure. Some of them have been torn down, and people wanted to build 5-story multi-purpose buildings for some reason. Or, I mean, how many drugstores do we need now, for God's sakes? But here's an example of a tavern that is being rebuilt. All right. This was Abraham Bonnell. Colonel Abraham Bonnell was a hero during the Revolutionary War. He also had a tavern which went back into the 1750s. And I suppose the family has owned the property all these years. The tavern sat idle for many years in disrepair. Hank Bonnell, who is the 7th grandson of Colonel Bonnell, he's taken it upon himself to rebuild this place. It's a labor of love. And come on, this guy is like, he gets 5 stars as far as I'm concerned. He's not only rebuilding the tavern, he's also going to have a brew pub in there. So Clinton is a very historic place. It's right when you're on Route 78, you get off the exit for Clinton, come down the ramp, it's right there. It's almost underneath Route 78. And so he's now going to be part of Clinton's history circuit. And I told him, Hank, I hope it's in time for Rev 250. I said, I'll be the first one to walk through the door. So nice chap, really, really nice guy. I love this drawing. It's a good drawing. I mean, just from a point of draftsmanship and artistic aspects, wonderful drawing. It shows what I was talking about. They're taking care of the horses, right? They're stopping, the tavern's stopping, people are getting out. There's smoke coming from the chimney. It must be cooking something on the stove, I guess. But this was Day's Tavern in the town of Chatham, which I think is Union County, if I'm not mistaken. What is it? Morris, is that right? Okay. So now you can't see it, but there was a back room in the building, in the tavern. And there was a man named, what was his name? Kolak was his name. And he was a printer. He was a newspaper man. He printed his newspapers, a Patriot newspaper, in the tavern. So tavern as a print house. And he distributed his newspapers all around that area, which was a big area for the conflict between the Americans and the British. So tavern was a place where they printed newspapers, at least here. So not too bad. Oh boy. George Washington's headquarters in Morristown, the Arnhold Tavern. It's gone, but they tried to save it. They moved it. They tried to make it part of a hospital they built. The hospital burned down and this place burned down. I mean, can you imagine what a gem this would be today? This is where Washington was in the winter of 1777, right after the Battle of Princeton. He came up here. This is where he stayed. I think this is also where Alexander Hamilton and Elizabeth Schuyler kind of a little sparks were flying there. I think that's where it was.
The taverns have 2 doors in the front. The other one,
I guess this one did. It all depends how they built them. And you know, back in those days, they build a place, and after 10 years, they say, let's put another door on the front. Okay, let's build another, or let's add a staircase, or that's what they did back in those days. Okay, but oh man, big loss. And this was right on the green in Morristown. Yeah, well, okay. This is in Mendham, nice town right west of Morristown. Now this place, this is the Black Horse Inn. It still operates as a tavern and a restaurant. And it's very nice. You walk in, they'll take care of you. And this was Mr. Bynum had a barn on the road between Mendham and Morristown. Mendham was called something else back then. And he realized there was a lot of traffic. He said, I'm going to take my old barn, I'm going to make it a tavern, make some money. And he did. George Washington was a big fan of my books. We were classmates at Montclair State. Nice guy. No, that's not true. This was at the Dye Mansion up near where I live. I live far away. Exit 153 on the Parkway, far, far away. So I live in Clifton, the town of Wayne. Passaic County is another place. It's just full of Revolutionary War and colonial history. So the Dye Mansion, DEY, they're open all year, and they have programs throughout the year. They have seminars, and they have workshops, and they do reenactments. So they did a reenactment of a encampment. And George Washington, the Dye Mansion was his headquarters in 1780. He was there for two times in several months. So Pompton and Preakness, that's where it was. So all the reenactors were cooking food and doing their drills and shooting muskets. I said, "Where's the general? I got to find the general." "Oh, he's inside." So I went inside. "Oh, General Washington, hi, nice to meet you." He said, "Oh," I said, "I've got this book and I write about you in the book." He said, "Oh yeah, really? Here, let me see that." He said, "Take my picture with the book." So I took his picture. There's the general. All right, there's the general. This is a nice statue in the Morristown Village Green. It's General Washington, Hamilton, and Lafayette. This is when Lafayette brought the news to General Washington that, yes, France is going to support you. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you guns. We're going to give you uniforms. Oh, great. This is a big deal now because now they've been holding on. So great statue. That's George. Okay. Francis Tavern. This is where I basically end my book at Francis Tavern in December of 1783. The war is over. We prevailed against the mightiest empire in the world. How did George Washington do this? God only knows. He must have been some leader. I mean, all right, yeah, he made mistakes. He's human. People want to put him on a pedestal. He's a real guy. And but he must have had he must have been a very smart man. He was a big guy because he worked on a farm. And somehow the men followed him. He got them to stay on even after their term was up to be soldiers. And he prevailed. And these guys were, in the great retreat of November, December 1776, they came through New Jersey, of course, went to the Delaware River and came back for the Battle of Trenton. These guys were wearing rags. Half of them didn't have any shoes on. And somehow he kept it going. Somehow he won. It's to me, it's who's our number one president of the United States? Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eisenhower. My vote is for George Washington. Yeah, question, yes? No, yes, in the back? Okay, all right.
How many terms were there in New Jersey at that time?
How many what?
How many terms?
I found 3 sources, and they all cited tax records from 1780. There were something in the neighborhood of 410 to 430. Yeah,
Quite a lot.
Yeah, well, a lot of people live in New Jersey. Yes, sir.
One of the things mentioned is that it was actually a law that required any incorporated town to have at least one tavern.
All right.
Otherwise, the town was fined. Now, this was already in the early 1800s.
Right.
It was not yet colonial times.
Right.
But New Jersey recognized the importance of the tavern.
Like I said that before, yes. It was almost a necessity and almost mandated that you had to have a tavern in the village. You're right. So, okay, so there's George. December 1783, the war is over. We're signing the Treaty of Paris. We're victorious. They're about to decide what we're going to do. One of George Washington's last official acts as general, he got all his top generals together at Francis Tavern, Lower Manhattan. It's a great place, real tavern, and very historic. And they met on the long room of the second floor. And he said, "I brought you men together because I just have to celebrate you, your courage, your dedication. Without you, we could have never prevailed in this grand campaign. We've won, we've prevailed." And everybody was making speeches and crying and laughing and making toasts. Okay, so party's over. George comes downstairs with his entourage, crosses the Hudson River, lands in Jersey City, And he starts his march, goes all through New Jersey. He's making speeches all along the way. He stops in Elizabeth, stops in Princeton, and people are they're just dying to meet this George Washington, this mythical figure. Goes all the way down to Annapolis, where he meets with the Continental Congress. Hands in his sword. He says, I just want to say thank you very much. It's been the honor of my life to command this army. We've prevailed against the British. I'm happy we're going to have our independence. And I'm out of here. Goodbye. No. George, we want you to stick around a little while. All right. Yes.
Did Francis come to Middletown? Did you find out anything about where he went?
There's books you could probably find out. I don't know.
He owned a piece of land here. I don't know if you ever
Mr. Francis. All right, so George Washington has to stick around for a little bit. Well, all these great men met in Philadelphia, hammer out the Constitution, 100 days of arguments, they called it. And they went back and forth. James Madison, who was our fourth president, I don't think he gets enough credit. He's mostly known as the father of the Constitution. He certainly wrote the Bill of Rights. Okay, so they agree upon a constitution, and they negotiated some things came out, some things were put in, but they had a working document. Not perfect, but working document. And then of course, Benjamin Franklin, Mr. Franklin, so what's the outcome? What are we going to be? We're going to be a republic if you can keep it, right? That's a famous quote. Okay, so now we're a democratic republic. What does that mean? Well, we're not going to be an empire. We're not going to be ruled by a king. We have to have a president. Who's going to be our president? I got an idea. How about George Washington? And he was saying, well, I'm going to get back to Monticello. I don't really want to get, yeah. All right. He said, 2 terms, and then a new president. See, he was smart. He understood power over a long period of time will corrupt. Somebody else has to take over. That's the 2-term tradition. I mean, I know Franklin Roosevelt did 4 terms, but 2 terms, it's in the Constitution now. So, I mean, talk about a guy who was visionary and knew his stuff. Here's a man who walked away from power. If he wanted to, he could have been proclaimed king, and he could have ruled for decades. He said, no, step away. You need to have a country like this, we're a democratic republic. You need a political process in place where we have new presidents. So the guy was just our best president. He started everything. So this is where my talk basically ends. This is where the book ends, and I keep coming with questions. I'm liking the discussion. That's my favorite part of the program. So
How long was he president?
2 terms. Yes, I think his last term was in 1790, I think, and then he died in 1799. A young man. He was in his 60s.
89 through almost 8 years.
Something like that, yeah. I forget offhand, but it's, yeah. George Washington, he's the man. Any other questions here? Any other comments? Anything I can help you with? I do have copies of my books for sale. If you'd like to buy one, I brought my pen. I'll autograph it for you. I even brought a couple of copies of the Diner books. Everybody always asks me for the Diner books. I figured, all right, I'm going to, even if I just sell one, make somebody happy. You make great holiday gifts. Yes, question. I got nothing against ghost stories. I got nothing against the Jersey Devils. It's not me. I mentioned one tavern in Bernardsville that was Captain Jones's Tavern, and the story was that they found a British spy among the ranks. That's where they were meeting. There it was a headquarters. They found him out and they hung him. But his fiancée lived there, and she was heartbroken, and so she died. And the story is that her ghost, she's still looking for him inside the tavern. But Not me, there's ghost stories, they're nice, but I don't do ghost stories. Yes,
Another little, I guess, tidbit. George Washington was friends with the Lairds,
yes,
and he got to know them. As a historian, I should know names better. I can't remember the Laird's his first name, but he befriended them because during the French and Indian Wars,
right,
one of his commanders under him was a laird, and that's how he got to know them.
yes, yes,
The laird's house was in Englishtown,
yes,
not far from the village.
okay, I didn't know that.
Actually, half a block down the
They
road.
gave him the recipe.
Washington wanted the recipe for apple, apple jack, apple brandy.
He made
and
cider at his
during-
farm.
During the Revolutionary
Yeah.
War, the rum was one of the things that they paid the soldiers in for providing them.
That's right.
And of course, the British controlled the rum trade at that time.
Yeah, but then the
So-
Patriots said, we don't need the, we're gonna make our own rum, so.
Right, so they came up with a local solution, Jersey Lightning.
Mhm.
And there are in the archives records where George Washington is ordering large sums of Applejack from Laird's.
Yeah. Now, I read online where George Washington and the Laird family exchanged letters. And I asked the woman who's in charge, I said, do you still have the letter? She said, it's been lost. C'est la vie. It's been lost. Oh, well.
Corn whiskey was popular too, right?
Yeah, the hard liquors, the Swedes were big in that. They were big in the hard liquors. That's what they brought with them. So maybe the Dutch too. I don't know.
Because there was a whiskey rebellion, right?
There was after the war. Yeah, that's right. And some of the Revolutionary War soldiers went to tamp it down. Yeah.
To add to that, George Washington actually lamented the Second Amendment because he knew that the farmers to put down the whiskey rebellion, which wasn't much of a rebellion, very few people, if any, died.
Mhm.
But he knew that he'd come up against a lot of farmers with
With
rifles.
guns, yeah. Well, we have a gun culture in this country. Second Amendment. Some people shouldn't have guns, but that's another story. I don't want to get into it.
The
Yeah.
taverns were used for meeting places.
Yes.
They were also an actual tavern.
Yes.
So typically we have a main room for
Mhm.
dining and drinking.
Mhm. Yep.
And then
A couple fireplaces.
rooms upstairs.
Rooms upstairs. If you want to spend the night, sleep on the floor next to about 6 other guys.
Yeah.
And
And then a kitchen.
the kitchen's often, if it was a big tavern, like the Hudibras Tavern in Princeton, the kitchen was an outbuilding because that's where the fire started. But yeah, so a tavern, like I said, a hospitality business. You can get food. The Hudibras in Princeton, they were big they made stew, rabbit stew, beef stew. That's what a lot of people ate back in those days. And they made pies and they had vegetables. Down in South Jersey in Absecon, there was a famous tavern down there. Fresh seafood was the bill of fare. So yeah, so that's it's like today. Go there and have a good time, drink, eat, be merry. Yes.
Hi, Michael, I'm Debbie. I am a local girl, and I live in the village section of the Hudson Pine.
Okay.
And I might have some fun facts for you. This is based on some conversations I had with neighbors that lived across the street that were very much into history. And having just seen Ken Burns, how many of you watched Ken Burns? Yeah,
It'll be
I think I
repeated.
saw that 3 out of 5. After the battle went on, which direction were they going? Because I know they camped out at King's Highway. In fact, you ever hear story how they had at the house with the pillars down at the police station in the town? There's a big colonial house and supposedly the police camped out there.
British came out of Philadelphia. They met up. That's where they met.
Right?
George Washington. They were in a lot of the troops were in Cranberry.
But wouldn't they have also gone to Sandy Hook to get on the ships? I don't know at that
Yes.
point.
Yes.
I don't know. There was a concert.
King's Highway, where they hung out. And my neighbor, Rod, told me that there was also a tavern in Middletown that was still standing. you wouldn't know it, but it's called Kings Highway that cuts over onto Red Hook Road. So you know the ugly train trestle that in Middletown and the New Jersey Transit really do nicely for us. As soon as you go over this train trestle, after the covered bridge in Middletown, immediately to your left in the woods, I was told that's a tavern. That was a tavern during this time. And I believe it's the Sanders. And my neighbor Rod Clayton is also an architect.
Oral history is legit. People tell stories and the stories are good. Stories are good.
And I lived also for 7 years on Conover Avenue, which was a part of the Conover estate, which was built later on. But the blacksmith shop that stands there, that's on our property, was, I was told, used to help trade for the back. When I garden, I would find pieces of horseshoes and some. But anyway.
Good story.
Just the that.
I'm right at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, one more question.
No, just a comment. That was the Rising Sun Tavern. Yes.
In Middletown,
Yeah.
so you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it still there? It's
It
when
was-
it's tough down there, it's probably not really noticed if you went. Yeah, you know what I'm, yeah. Okay.
Rising Sun Tavern.
Michael, thank you for keeping the stories alive.
I'm writing as fast as I can.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.